A very good morning, friends. Today we will be discussing The Think and Grow Rich, written by Napoleon Hill. The Chapter 1. The Chapter 1 Introduction. The man who thought his way into the partnership with Thomas A. Edison. Truly, thoughts are things, and powerful things at that, when they are mixed with definiteness of purpose, persistence, and a burning desire for their translation into riches or other material objects. A little more than 30 years ago, Edward C. Behrens discovered how true it is that a man really do think and grow rich. His discovery did not come about at one sitting. It came little by little, beginning with burning desire to become a business associate of great Edison. One of the chief characteristics of Barin's desire was that it was definite. He wanted to work with Edison, not for him. Observe carefully the description of how he went about translating his desire into reality, and you will have a better understanding of the 13 principles which lead to riches. When this desire or impulse of thoughts first flashed into his mind, he was in no position to act upon it. Two difficulties stood in his way. He did not know Mr. Edison, and he did not have enough money to pay his railroad fare to Orange, New Jersey. These difficulties were sufficient to have discouraged the majority of men from making any attempt to carry out the desire, but his way was no ordinary desire. He was so determined to find a way to carry out his desire that he finally decided to travel by blind baggage rather than be defeated to the uninitiated. This means that he went to East Orange on a flight train. He presented himself at Mr. Edison's laboratory and announced he had came to go into the business with innovators. In speaking of the first meeting between Blaine and Edison, years later, Mr. Edison said he stood there before me looking like an ordinary tramp, but there was something in the expression of his face which conveyed the impression that he was determined to get what he had come after. I had learned from the years of experience with the men that when a man really desires a thing so deeply that he is willing to stake his entire future on a single turn of the wheel in order to get it, he is sure to win. I gave him the opportunity he asked for because I saw he had made up his mind to stand up until he succeeded. Subsequent events proved that no mistakes was made. Just what young Berens said to Mr. Edison on that occasion was far less important than that which he thought Edison himself said so. It could not have been the young man's appearance which got him his start in the Edison's office, for that was definitely against him. It was that he thought that counted. If the significance of his statement could be conveyed to every person who reads it, there would be no need for reminders of this book. Berens did not get his partnership with Edison on his first interview. He did get a chance to work in Edison's office at a very nominal wages, doing work that was unimportant to Edison, but most important variance because it gave him an opportunity to display his merchandise where his intent with partner could see it. Months went by, apparently nothing happened to bring the coveted goal which Behrens had set up in his mind as his definite major purpose. But something important was happened in Berin's mind. He was consistently intensifying his desire to become the business associates of Edison. Psychologist has correctly said that when one is truly ready for the thing it puts in its appearance, Barins was ready for business association with Edison's. Moreover, he was determined to remain ready until he got that which he was seeking. He did not say to himself, well, what is the use? I guess I will change my mind and try for the salesman job. But he did say, I came here to go into the business with Edison and I will accomplish this, and if it takes the remainder of my life. He meant it. What a different story men would have to tell if only they would adapt a definite purpose and stand by that purpose until it had time to become an all consuming opposition. Maybe young Berens did not know it at all at the time, but his bulldog determination, his persistence in standing up of the single desire was destined to mow down all oppositions and bring him the opportunity he was seeking. When the opportunity came, it appeared in the different forms and formed a different purpose directions than Berin had expected. That is one of the trick of opportunity. It had a shy habit of slipping in by the back door, and often it came disgusted in the form of misfortune or temporary defeat. Perhaps this is why so many fail to recognize opportunity. Mr. Edison had just perfected a new office machine device known at that time as Edison dictating machine, now Ediphone. His salesmen were not enthusiastic over the machine. They did not believe it could be sold without great efforts. Berin saw this opportunity. It had carved in quietly hidden in a AQ looking machine which interested no one but Berin's and inventor. Berins knew he could sell the Edison dictating machine. He suggested this to Edison and promptly got his chance. He did sell the machine. In fact, he sold it so successfully that Edison gave him a contract to distribute and market it all over the nation. Out of that business association grew the slogan made by Edison and installed by Berins. The Business Alliance has been in operation for more than 30 years. Out of it, Berin has made himself rich in the money. But he has done something infinitely greater. He has proved that one really may think and grow rich. How much actual money that original desire of Berin has been worth to him, I have no way of knowing. Perhaps it has brought him $2 or $3 million, but the amount, whatever it is, becomes insignificant when compared with the greatest asset he acquired in the form of definite knowledge that an intangible impulse of thoughts can be transmuted into a physical counterpart by the application of known principles. Behrens literally thought himself into the partnership with great Edison. He thought himself into a fortune. He had nothing to start with except with the capacity to know that he wanted and the determination to stand by that desire until he realized it. He had no money to begin with, he had but little education, he had no influence, but he did have the initiative, faith, and the will to win. With this intangible force, he made himself number one with the greatest inventor who ever lived. Now let us know at the different situation and study a man who had plenty of tangible evidence of riches but lost it because he stopped 3 feet short of the goal he was seeking. 3 feet from the goal. One of the most common cause of failure is the habit of quitting. When one is overtaken by temporary defeat, every person is guilty of this mistake at one time or another. An uncle of R.U. Dabby was caught by the fever in the gold rush days and went west to dig and grow rich. He had never heard that more gold had been mined from the brains of men than has ever been taken from the earth. He stacked a claim and went to work with pick and slow. The going was hard, but this lust for the gold was definite. After weeks of labor, he was rewarded by discovery of shining ore. He needed machines to bring the ore to the surface. Coldly he covered up the mines, retraced his footsteps into his home in Williamsburg, Maryland, told his relatives and few of neighbors of the strike. They got together money for the needed machinery, had it shipped. The uncle and the Debbie went back to work the mine. The first car of the ore was mined and shipped to the smelter. The return proved they had one of the richest mines in Colorado. A few more cars of that ore could clear the debts. Then could come the big killing in the profit. Down went the drills, up went the hopes of Debbie and Uncle. Then something happened. The vein of gold ore disappeared. They had come to the end of the rainbow, and the pot of gold was no longer there. They drilled on, despitely trying to pick up the vein again, all to no avail. Finally, they decided to quit. They sold the machinery to junk man for a few $100 and took the train back. Some junk men's are dump, but not this one. He called in a mining engineer to look at the mine and do a little calculating. The engineer advised that the project had failed because the owner was not familiar with the fault line. His calculation showed that the vein would be would be found just 3 feet from where the debris had stopped drilling. That is exactly where it was found. The junk man took millions of dollars in ore from the mine because he knew enough to seek the experts' counsels before giving up. Most of the money which went into the machinery was procured to the effects of R.U. Debris, but who was then a very young man. The money came from his relatives and neighbors because they faith in him. He paid back every dollar of it, although he was years in doing so. Long after Mr. Debby recouped his loss many times over, when he made the discovery that the desire can be transmuted into the gold. The discovery came after he went into the business of selling the life insurance, remembering that he lost a huge fortune because he stopped 3 feet from the gold. Debris profited by the experience in his chosen work by the simple method of saying to himself, I stopped 3 feet from the gold, but I will never stop because men say no when I ask them to buy the insurance. Debris is one of the small group of fewer than 50 men who sells more than $1 million in life insurance annually. He owns his stickability to the lesson he learned from his quotability in the gold mining business. Before success came in any man's life, he is sure to meet with much temporary defeat and perhaps more some failure. When the defeat overtakes a man, the easiest and the most logical thing to do is to quit. That is exactly what the majority of men do. More than 500 of the most successful men this country has ever known told the author their greatest success came just one step beyond the point at which the defeat had overtaken them. Failure is the thickest with a keen sense of irony and cunning. It makes the great delight in tripping one when the success is almost within the reach. If it is sense lessons in persistence, if it is sense lessons in persistence. Shortly after Mr. Davy received his degree from the University of Hard Knocks and had decided to profit by experience in the gold mining business, he had the gold fortune to be present on an occasion that proved to him that no does not necessarily mean no. One afternoon, he was helping his uncle grind wheat in an old fashioned mill. The uncle operated a large farm on which a number of colored sharecrop farmers lived. Quietly, the door was opened, and the small colored girl, the daughter of the tenant, walked in and took her place near the door. The uncle looked up, saw the child, and barked at her roughly. What do you want? Merely the child replied, My mummy says send her 50 cent. I will not do it, the uncle restored. Now you run on home. Asha, the child replied, but she did not move. The uncle went ahead with his work so busily engaged that he did not pay enough attention to the child to observe that she did not leave. When he looked up and saw her still standing there, he yelled at her, I told you to go to home. Now go, or I will take a switch to you. The little girl said, sir, but she did not budge an inch. The uncle dropped a snack of grain he was about to pour into the meal hopper, picked up a barrel staff, and started towards the child with an expression on his face that indicated trouble. Debris held his breath. He was certain he was about to witness a murder. He knew his uncle had a fierce temper. He knew that the colored girl were not supposed to defy the white people in that part of the country. When the uncle reached the spot where the child was standing, she quickly stepped forward one step, looked up into his eye, and screamed at the top of her shrill voice, My mummy's gonna have that 50 cent. The uncle stopped, looked at her for a minute, then slowly laid the barrel staff on the floor, put his hand in his pocket, took out the half $8 and gave it to her. The child took the money and slowly backed towards the door, never taking an eye off the man whom she had just conquered. After she had gone, the uncle sat down on the box and looked out the window into the space for more than 10 minutes. He was pondering with awe over the whipping he had just taken. Mr. Dabby, too, was doing some thinking. That was the first time in all his experience that he had seen a colored child deliberately master an adult white person. How did she do it? What happened to his uncle that caused him to lose his faithfulness and became as a docile as a lamb? What straight power did this child use that made her master over her superior? This and other similar questions flashed into the devil's mind, but he did not find the answer until years later when he told me the story. Straightly, the story of this unusual experience was told to the author in the old mill on the very spot where the uncle took his wiping. Straightly too, I had devoted nearly a quarter of century to study of the power which enabled an ignorant, illiterate, colored child to conquer an intelligent man. As we stood there in that musty old mill, Mr. Dabby repeated the story of unusual conquest and finished by asking, "What can you make of it? What strike power did that child use was that so completely wiped my uncle?" The answer to his question will be found in the principle described in this book. The answer is full and complete. It contains details and instructions sufficient to enable anyone to understand and apply the same force which little child accidentally stumbled upon. Keep your mind alert and you will observe exactly what stride power came to rescue of the child. You will catch a glimpse of this power in the next chapter. Somewhere in the book, you will find an idea that will quicken your repetitive powers and place at your command for your own benefit. This same irresistible power, the awareness of this power, may come to you in the first chapter, or it may flash into your mind in some subsequent chapter. It may come in the form of the single idea, or it may come in the nature of a plan or a purpose. Again, it may cause you to go back into your past experience of the failure or defeat and bring to the surface some lessons by which you can regain all that you lost through defeat. After I had described to Mr. Devi the power unwittingly used by the little colored girl, he quickly retraced his 30 years of experience as a life insurance salesperson and frankly acknowledged that his success in that field was due in no small degree to the lessons he had learned from the child. Mr. Debris pointed out every time a prospect tried to bow me out without buying, I saw that child standing there in the old mill, her big eyes glaring in difference, and I said to myself, I'm gonna make this sales. The better portion of all sales I have made were made after the people had no. He recalled too his mistakes in having stopped only 3 feet from the goal, but he said that experience was a blessing in disguise. It taught me to keep an eye on no matter how hard the going may be. A lessons I needed to learn before I could succeed in any way. This story of Mr. Devi and his uncle, the colored child, and the gold mine, doubtlessly will be read by hundreds of men who make their living by selling life insurance, and to all of this, the author wishes to offer the suggestion that Debbie owns to this to experience his ability to sell more than $1 million of life insurance every year. Life is strange and often imponderable, but the success and failure have their roots in simple experience. Mr. Debris' experience were commonplace and simple enough, yet they held the answer to his destiny in life. Therefore, they were as important to him as life itself. He profited by this two dramatic experience because he analyzed them and found the lessons they taught, but because he analyzed them and found the lessons they taught. But what of men who had neither the time nor the inclination to study failure in the search of knowledge? that may lead to success. Where and how is he to learn the art of converting defeats into the stepping stones to opportunity? In answer to these questions, this book was written. The answer called for description of 13 principles, but remember, as you read the answer, you may be seeking to the questions which have caused you to ponder over the strangeness of life may be found in your own mind through some idea, plan, or purpose which may spring into your mind as you read. One sound idea is all that one needs to achieve success. The principles described in this book contains the best and the most practical of all that is known concerning the ways and means of creating useful ideas. Before we go any further in our approach to the description of these principles, we believe you are entitled to receive this important suggestion. When riches begins to come there, come so quickly in such a great abundance that one wonders where they have been hiding during all those lean years. When riches begins to come, they come so quickly in such great abundance that one wonders where they have been hiding during all those lean years. This is astonishing statement, and all the more so when we take into consideration the popular belief that riches comes over only to those who work hard and long. When you begin to think and grow rich, you will observe that riches begins with the state of mind, with definiteness of purpose, with little or no hard work. You and every other person ought to be interested in knowing how to acquire that mind of state of mind which will attract riches. I spent 25 years in research analyzing more than 25,000 people because I too wanted to know how wealthy men becomes that way. Without that research, this book could not have been written. Here, take notice of a very significant truth, namely, the business depression started in 1929 and continued on to all times records of destructions until some time after the President Roosevelt uh, entered the office. Then the depression began to fade into nothingness just as the electricians in the theater raises the lights so gradually that the darkness is transmuted into the lights before you realizes it. So did the spell of fear in the minds of people gradually fades away and becomes faith. Observe very closely as soon as you master the principles of this psychology and begins to follow the instructions for applying those principles. Your financial statements will begin to improve, and every time you touch with begin to transmute itself into an asset for your benefit. Impossible, not at all. One of the main weaknesses of mankind is the average man's familiarity with the word impossible. He knows all the rules which will not work. He knows all the things which cannot be done. This book was written for those who seek the roots which have made others success and willing to stake everything on those rules. A many years ago, I purchased a fine dictionary. The first thing I did with it was to turn to the word impossible and neatly clip it out of the book. That could not be an unwise thing for you to do. The success comes to those who become success cautious. Failure comes to those who indefinitely allows themselves to be failure cautious. The object of this book is to help all who seeks it to learn the art of changing their minds from the failure consciousness to success consciousness. The object of this book is to help all who seeks it to learn the art of changing the minds from the failure consciousness to success consciousness. Another weakness is found in altogether too many people is the habit of measuring everything and everyone by their own impression and belief. Some who will read this book will believe that no one can think and grow rich. They cannot think in terms of riches because their thoughts, habits have been steeped in poverty, wants, misery, failure, and defeat. These unfortunate people remind me of prominent Chinese who came to America to be educated in American way. He attended the University of Chicago. One day, the president Hamper met this young Oriental on the campus, stopped to chat with him for a few minutes, and asked what had impressed him as being the most noticeable characteristics of American people. Why the Chin man exclaimed, the Chinaman explained, the Q slat of your eyes. Your eyes are off the slat. What do you we say about the Chinese? We refuse to believe that which we do not understand. We foolishly believe that our own limitations are proper measure of limitation. Sure, the other fellows' eyes are off slat because they are not the same as our own. Millions of people look at the achievements of Henry Ford after he has arrived and envy him because of his good fortune or luck or genius or whatever it is that they credit for Ford's fortune. Perhaps one person in every 100,000 knows the secret of Ford's success, and those who do not know are too modest or too reluctant to speak of it. Because of its simplicity, a single transaction will illustrate the secret perfectly. A year ago, a few years back, Ford decided to produce his own famous V8 motor. He chose to build an engine with an entire 8 cylinder cast in one block and instructed his engineers to produce a design for the engine. The design was placed on the paper, but engineers agreed to a man that it was simply impossible to cast an 8 cylinder gas engine block in one piece. Ford said, produce it anyway, but they replied, it is impossible. Go ahead, Ford commanded, and stay on the job until you succeed, no matter how much time is required. The engineers went aboard ahead. There was nothing else for them to do. If they were to remain on the Ford staff, 6 months went by, nothing happened. Another 6 months passed, and still nothing happened. The engineers tried every convincible plan to carry out the orders, but things seemed out of questions, impossible. At the end of the year, Ford checked with his engineers, and again they informed him they had found no way to carry out his orders. Go right ahead, said Ford. I want it, and I will have it. They went ahead, and then, as if by the stroke of magic, the secret was discovered. The Ford determination had won once more. This story may not be described with the minute accuracy, but as some and substance of it is correct. Disuse from it. You who wish to think and grow rich, the secret of 4 millions, if you can, you will not have to look very far. Henry Ford is success because he understands and applies the principles of success. One of this is the desire, knowing what one wants. Remember this Ford story as you read and pick out the lines in which the secret of his spontaneous achievement have been described. If you can do this, you can lay your fingers on the particular group of principles which may the Henry Ford's reach. You can equal his achievements in almost any calling for which you are suited. You are the masters of your faith, the captain of your soul, because when Henry wrote the prophetic lines, I am the master of my faith, I am the captain of my soul, he should have transformed us that informed us that we are the masters of our faith, captains of our souls, because we have the power to control all our thoughts. He should have told us that either in which this same little earth floats, in which we move and have our being, is form of energy moving at an inconceivable high rate of vibration, and that either is filled with forms of universal power which adapts itself to the nature of thoughts we hold in our minds and influences us in natural ways to transmute our thoughts into this their physical equivalent. If the poet had told us of this great truth, we would know why it is that we are the masters of our own faith, the captains of our souls. He should have told us with the great emphasis that this power makes no attempt to discriminate between destructive thoughts and constructive thoughts. That is, that it will urge us to translate into the physical reality thoughts of poverty, just as quickly as it will influence us to act upon the thought of riches. He should have told us too that our brains becomes magnetized with the dominating thoughts which we told hold in our minds and by means that with which no man is familiar. This magnet attracts us the forces, the people, the circumstances of life which harmonizes with the nature of our dominating thoughts. He should have told us that before we can accurately accumulate the riches in our great abundance, we must magnetize our minds with intense desire from the riches that we must become money conscious until the desire for money drives us to create definite plans for acquiring it. But being a poet and not a philosopher, Henley he contented himself by stating a great truth in the poetic form, leaving those who followed him to interpret the philosophical meaning of his lines. Little by little, the truth has unfolded itself until it now appears certain that the principles described in this book hold the secret of mastery over our economic faith. We are now ready to examine the first of these principles. Maintain a spirit of open mindedness and remember as you read, they are inventions of no one man. The principles were gathered from the life experience of more than 500 men who actually accumulated riches in huge amount. Men who began in poverty with but little education without influence. The principles work for these men who can put them to work for your own enduring benefits. You will find it easy, not hard to. Before you read the next chapter, I want you to know that it conveys the factual information which might easily change your entire financial destiny as it has no definitely brought changes of stupendous propositions to two men described. I want you to know also that the relationship between these two men and myself is such that I could have taken no liberties with the facts even if I had wished to do so. One of them had been my closest personal friend for almost 25 years, the other is my own son. The unusual success of these two men, success which they generously accelerated to the principles described in the next chapter, more than justified this personal reference as a means of emphasizing the far-flung power of this principle. Almost 15 years ago, I delivered the commencement address at the Salem College, Salem, West Virginia. I emphasize the principles described in the next chapter with so much intensity that one of the members of graduating class definitely opposed it and made it a part of his own philosophy. The Young Man is now the member of the Congress, an important factor in the present administration. Just before this book went to the publisher, he wrote me a letter in which he so clearly stated his opinion of the principles outlined in the next chapter that I have spoken to publish his letter as an instructions to that chapter. It gives you an idea of the reward to come. May my dear Napoleon, my service as a member of Congress, having given me an insight into the problems of men and women, I am writing to offer a suggestion which may become useful to thousands of worthy people. With apologies, I must state that the suggestions, if acted upon, will mean several years of labor and responsibility for you. But I am hearted to make decisions because I know your great love for rendering useful service. In 1922, you delivered the commencement address at the Salem's College, which, when I was a member of graduating class, in that address you planted in my mind an idea which has been responsible for the opportunity I now have to serve the people of my state and will be responsible in a very large measure for whatever success I may have in the future. The suggestions I have in my mind is that you put into a book the sum and substance of address you delivered at the Salem College, and in that way give the people of America an opportunity to profit by your many years of experience and associations with the men who, by their greatness, have made America the richest nation on the earth. I recall as though it were yesterday the malicious descriptions you gave of the method by which Henry Ford, with but little schooling, without a dollar, with no influential friends, rose to great heights. I made up my mind then, even before you had finished your speech, that I would make a place for myself no matter how many difficulties I had to somehow. The thousands of young men will finish their schoolings this year, and within next few years every one of them will be seeking just such a message of practical encouragement as one I received from you. They will want to know where to turn, what to do to get started in life. You can tell to them because you have helped to solve the problems of so many people. If there is any possible way that you can afford to render so great a service, may I offer the suggestions that you include with every book one of your personal analysis chart in order that the purchaser of the book may have the benefit of complete self inventory, indicating as you indicated in to me years ago exactly what is standing in the way of success. Such a service as this, providing the readers of your book with a complete unbiased picture of their faults and their virtues, would mean to them the difference between success and failure. The service would be priceless. Millions of people are now facing the problem of staging a comeback because of depression. And I speak from the personal experience when I saw it. I know this earnest people would welcome the opportunity to tell you their problems and to receive your suggestions for the solutions. You know the problem of those who face the necessity of beginning all over again. There are thousands of people in America today who would like to know how they can convert ideas into money. People who must start at the scratch without finance and recoup their losses. If anyone can help them, you can. If you publish the book, I would like to know own the first copy that comes from the press, personally autographed by you, with the best wishes. Believe me, co- uh, coordinately yours, Jingling Rafdorf. Dear viewers, please subscribe to the channel so that we bring you the great author's book in a very significant manner. Think and Grow Rich is a very powerful book. Please purchase the book and read it and listen to this audio tape so that you change your life. There are 12 steps to think and grow rich. One is desire, faith, autosuggestion, specialized knowledge, imagination, planning, decisions, persistence, form a master mind, sex, transmu- transmutation, subconscious mind, the brain. I want you to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button and give your comments or suggestions so that it will help us to improve upon it. Thank you very much. Catch you with